Welcome, trust builders. I'm Sue Dyer, and this is Lead with Trust, where we explore how leaders can build their business on a foundation of trust and reap the rewards of becoming the top performer in their market. Leaders that understand how to use and leverage trust are uniquely positioned to disrupt their industry and dominate their market. Distrust of businesses and business leaders is at an all-time high. Trusted businesses must have trusted leaders, and your team, your customers, and your vendors are waiting for you and elevate the level of trust in your business. My hope is that this podcast can help you start your trusted leader journey. Welcome to Lead with Trust, Mark. I'm so happy that you're here.
I appreciate you having me on, Sue. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, again, I ask every guest, what group did you belong to in high school?
Yeah, in high school, I was definitely with the nerds and the outcasts. It's just that my school predominantly was composed of nerds and outcasts. So I didn't feel quite as alienated as it's sounding here. So like we were all malcontents. So that's but I was always as an I say outcast. I wasn't really outcast, but when you're a kid, you look at it that way. And so I would always be looking at things I would consciously try to find something different to separate myself from other, like the music I liked or whatever it is. And so that kind of impulse within me has stayed. And so now I use that with businesses. I make businesses into outcasts.
Or incasts.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Well, that's interesting because you still have the same mindset today. So that's
I do.
You're building on it.
It's what is this thing about and what's cool about it, and how do we make that coolness stand out so that people get really excited by it? Like that's really all my life what it is kind of I was doing.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
Yeah.
So I know you have this concept you call the open kitchen.
Yes.
And this can help organizations be more honest and trustworthy, which certainly we need to build trust, in your marketplace. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. So the open kitchen concept of business to me is this. It's that people, the public, to anyone who's listening, the public cares as much about who you are as a human being as they care about your products and services. They care deeply about why you do the work you do and what your philosophical approach is to the work you do and so forth. And they care what you care about in the world. And so they care so deeply about those things that the more they know about those things, about what drives you and why you're doing this work, the more they understand those things and the more they align with those things. In other words, if it suits them, if it fits them, the more they know and align with it, the more likely they are to buy from you, and the better the better use they get out of what they buy from you, because what they bought comes from you and they trust you. So they're going to get better use out of it because they'll say, oh, this comes from Sue. Well, she knows what she's doing and this stuff's really important to her. So I'm really going to use this to its fullest extent, right? It doesn't just come from like someone who doesn't really care. Here's someone who really knows what's up. Does that make sense? So the open kitchen concept. So where this comes from the world, obviously, of restaurants. So in the old days, and put aside the idea of COVID right now, like this is a pre-COVID thought. So in the old days of restaurants, where would they put the kitchens? They'd put them in the back, in the corner, in the dark of the restaurant. So you'd sit there and you'd say, where's my waiter? Where's my food? I wonder if this place is clean. You'd sit there and you wouldn't have any information at all about your meal or about what was happening. And you get really angry. Now, though, when enlightened restaurateurs build a restaurant, what they do is they put the kitchen in the middle of the restaurant or in the very front, and they don't even have any walls. Or they might have clear plexiglass walls or handrails or something just to delineate. And that's called the open kitchen concept in restaurants. And so that's because the public, the diners, they want to see the chef's face. They want to see how the chef interacts with the wait staff. They want to see what the ingredients of the meals are and so forth. They want to see all this stuff. It's an important part of them, like to feel that they understand everything and what's happening. So that kind of idea of the open kitchen concept is prevalent everywhere in business. Places like Patagonia, they have one side of their website where you can buy stuff from them, like sweaters and things like that. But then they also have the half of their site where they tell you the story of their founding, and they tell you where they get their materials from and where they're being a success from a sustainability standpoint, but where they're failing from a sustainable, like they're really clear about all this stuff. This idea of open kitchen, it's kind of like, it's also the idea, again, it's prevalent everywhere. Tesla, if you go into a Tesla dealership, they have the Tesla car in pieces there. You're not going to buy the car in pieces, but right, you want to see how everything works. Or it's when people watch a movie and they watch the commentary of the movie. They're watching the movie along with the director or a star's commentary as to what's happening. That's open kitchen, right? That's showing people what your choices were, what you were thinking. And the more they understand it, the more they appreciate it. That's my long-winded way of saying, like, whatever business you're in, you need to adopt that strategy. And no matter what business you're in, you can adopt it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, how we would adopt that. Say for a digital business or for a construction business or so those are things in the concrete world, the digital world, and maybe something that's product and something that's service oriented.
Yeah. So things, just to throw out things that I've done with clients. So, putting up your philosophy on the site, putting up videos of you explaining your philosophy on the site, giving clients tours of your factories or whatever it is that's happening, including the history about why it started, right? Like it's nothing terribly difficult. It's just showing like, oh yeah, here's why we do what it is that we do. Like here's think of it in this way, behind the scenes, showing them behind the scenes and why stuff's important to you. Oh yeah, like our restaurant, we're a Mexican restaurant, but our food, we prepare all our food from this certain region in Mexico. And the reason why we prepare it there, that region's important to us for this reason. And in that region, this particular pepper is grown. I'm making all this up.
Right.
This particular pepper is grown. And what it is, it's a sweeter pepper than others. So our dishes have but it's in honor of this kind of festival or something. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah. So you're really giving a context and a story to give it a deeper meaning.
That's right. That's right. It's set in context. It's like, here's why we're doing it this way. Like, how do you do it? You very much adopt some open kitchen principles in the work you do. Like, what would be, how do you do it now? Like, do you tell people about why this work's important to you?
Well, I am doing more of that now, for sure. I don't think I've done that for a long time in my other business that I sold, but in Sudico, for sure. I think that people understand that this is my life's work, and it's at the core of what everything I'm doing is to make a transformation within how business is run overall. And I have all these years and years of proving these models, and yeah, I could be retired, but I'm not.
Right, right. And also you come from backgrounds, right? I know a bit about your background, both your maternal and paternal, like, both
Yeah.
sides of the family. They're heavy duty entrepreneurs, right? Like they were big time entrepreneurs. And so they very much tried to take ownership of their lives and to create, they didn't wait around for things. They tried to make things better through their own initiative. And so you kind of grew up at the kitchen table, growing up, like hearing these stories of just like, oh, if you don't like something in society, go do something about it.
Yeah. And
Right.
I remember too, driving with my dad, like he owned a company that worked in with manufacturing. It's like he helped build the Matterhorn in Disneyland. And
Are you serious? Really?
yeah. And then the mechanisms, the mechanisms that pull up he helped build that stuff. And then he would like the big toothpaste mixers and C&H sugar. So when they would have an outage on a weekend, I got to go with him.
Oh my God. You got to go to the Matterhorn.
I loved going and just being able to go into the manufacturing plants or the different places where he was working and help bring apart or fix whatever was broken.
Oh my God, I love that. By the way, I have to say this, not that it has anything to do with anything. In 1969, I was 6 years old. My family, we lived in Flushing, Queens. We went to Disneyland, and I was 6 years old. My older brother would have been 15. And so he went on the Matterhorn. Like he went off, like I was with my mom and he went off and when he came back, he had this metal hippie medallion, like a peace sign or whatnot, and it had a chain or whatnot that you wear around your neck. And he said, "You see this? This is a medal I got for being brave and going on the Matterhorn by himself." Really, it was just a hippie medallion that some poor hippie dropped, like and he like just picked it up or so. I learned this years later, but I remember saying, "I need to go on the Matterhorn and get a medal too." Anyway.
Well, I don't know about many medals that are given there, but it's still a very fun ride.
It is, right.
So I know that your work is about differentiating people,
Yes.
businesses in the marketplace. And I think there's never been a time that's more important, because as we switch businesses to being more and more and more digital and online, and that there seems to be really a need for a personal brand as well as a business brand. Tell us more about, how we can differentiate. Because I know when I was in my MBA program, there was sort of two ways that you could run your business. You could be the low cost provider like Walmart, or you could differentiate. And meaning that you were special to some group or differentiated in some way. So I know this is your expertise. So I'd just love to, learn more about what you think about how do we differentiate ourselves.
Oh, sure. Well, first, the idea of needing to differentiate is now, it used to be really important, and now it's life or death. The idea, even in personal brands, in differentiation. I'll explain. If some of your listeners may know Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
So Gary, super brilliant guy, marketing guy. And so I saw Gary speak a couple of years ago, and this is what he said. He said, in the near future, in the next few years, because of voice, like voice search, right? Of people saying into their phone, "Hey Siri, what now?" So search is then going to be a zero-sum game. I'm not sure he said those words, but that was the idea. It was, if you ask Siri, what's a cheeseburger near me, that she better say your brand. He was talking to a room. I was speaking at a franchise convention, and he was speaking too. So he's speaking to a room of franchisees. So he said, if the person says, "What's a cheeseburger that I can eat around here?" she better say your cheeseburger, otherwise you're done. Like with voice, you often don't get this long rollout of like lots and lots and lots of pages. You only get like a few selections or even sometimes one selection, right? So it's essential that when someone asks for a cheeseburger, like she better say Big Mac, or she better say Whopper with cheese, or whatever your cheeseburger is. Otherwise, you're not going to be on the search page anymore. And he said that search is only going to go more in that direction now. This zero sum thing, this not people searching for pages. It's like just kind of the initial one or two, whatever options. So if you think about that with you and your business, right, or you and your personal brand, it's like you've got to stand out now. And so the way that you stand out, so by differentiating, you don't differentiate in a vacuum. You are always differentiating against something else, right? It's always against. Because if you were in a field where you had no competition, all you'd have to do is tell people what you did. And like that would be it. But if you have competitors in your field, it's standing out from them. So whatever you differentiate around has to be in response to something that they stand for, if that makes sense, right? So one way that I have people differentiate is I sometimes do an exercise. I call it the stereotypes exercise. And it's the idea of imagine someone walks into your organization and they know nothing about your organization. They know other than you're in a certain category, but they don't know anything about your prices or anything like that. But it doesn't mean that they come in with open, empty minds, waiting for you to fill their minds up with goodness. Even if they don't know you, they come in with preconceived notions, with stereotypes about what you're going to say to them, about what your prices are, your services, your guarantees, how you do the work you do, and so forth, right? They're stereotypes about what it is that you're going to tell them. And so I have clients sometimes first come up with what all the stereotypes are. And some of them, right? Some of them will be true for the client, but others not. Like, what are all the stereotypes? And then the second part of the exercise is, what are all the ways you are different from the stereotypes? What ideas, insights, stories, business practices, like what are all the ways you are different? And by looking at those differences, we then pick the one that's strategically most interesting, or we put together some in a way that creates a differentiation that they can get behind. Right? Does that make sense?
It does. Can you give me an example of how you would put it together? Because that's what I'm not sure. Would it be just like a sentence? Would it be a group of sentences? Does it change the offerings, or is it just really how you
it can
depict yourself in the world?
Yeah. Great questions. So let me give you an example, like Volvo. So Volvo, everyone knows, what does Volvo stand for?
Safety.
Right. Everyone, there's no one who won't
put your baby on board.
Right, exactly. So when Volvo, they're the safe car. You buy them if you want you and your family safe. That was initially a marketing claim. So however many decades ago, I don't know if it was in the 80s or the 70s or the 60s, it was during that time, Volvo said, oh, wow, well, we can't be a fancy sports car like a Lamborghini. Like, people won't go for that. Like, go fast. They won't go for that because we're not, our cars, we're like, these, middle of the road cars. And I don't mean quality, but I mean like they weren't like aerodynamically like a Lamborghini. Like, we're not this, we're not that. Other people have claims on those ideas. And so they said, hey, wait a minute. People like to not die when they're driving. Why don't we say that we're the safe car? They were no safer than any other car. They just decided, they said, no one's using that. And we think that might be important. Let's say that. So they made that claim and it started to work. people started to like it. They said, oh yeah, I want me and my family safe. They started to buy it. And so now they started to say, oh my God, now we need to start building extra safety into our cars, with the steel frame and all those kinds of things. So does that make sense?
They found something that they were already doing and they could do more of that nobody else was doing.
Right. And here's another example based on what you said. Oh, how would you make this happen? So years ago, I was working with an industrial architect firm in Princeton, New Jersey. So they would make buildings for like Merck and Ciba Geigy and places like that, like office complexes.
Uh-huh.
And I said, what is right? Because we're looking at stereotypes. I said, what's the biggest stereotype about industrial architects? Like, what would people who came in to see you, even though they don't know you, what would they not like instantly without even knowing you? And the principal of the company said, oh my God, that's so easy. That business people think that all industrial architects, that we're unreliable business people, that we think of ourselves as artistes. And we just want to build a building that's a homage to our artistic vision, that will go over price, will go over time frame. We won't keep up with any of that stuff. We won't return their phone calls or their emails. We just want to have our name on something that we can point to with pride, that suits our artistic temperament. And so it doesn't matter the business consequences. And so business people feel that way. And I said, are you that way? And he said, no, we're very reliable. And I said, okay, great. I want you to gather every fact, figure, and story and statistic that shows that you are reliable. And we're going to put it together in like a brag sheet or like a little script all around the idea that you're reliable. So and we're going to print it out, and we're going to give it to everyone in the company, the principals, the architects, the drafts people, the people answering the phone, so that if people ever want to use it, they don't have to read it. They don't have to follow it in any way, but they just have some facts, figures, and stories that substantiate why you're reliable. Does that make sense? So it sounded like this, right? It's the fact that we're the reliable industrial architect firm. So everything I'm going to say to you points to reliability. It's not just a mass of facts, figures, and stories. It's all of those that like essentially say, we're reliable, here's why. These are the bullet points about why we're reliable. So we're the reliable industrial architect firm. We've been in business for almost 20 years. In 20 years, we've done almost 4,000 projects. We have 214 repeat clients, including the first client who ever hired us when we opened our doors 20 years ago, the Lakewood School District. They're still our client today. On average, our clients hire us for over 16 projects. On the commercial side, we deal with Merck, Bayer, Ciba Geigy, Paul Miller, Bentley, Rolls-Royce, big prestigious places. On the industrial, that's not the right word, not industrial, but whatever side, we deal with the Wharton Police Department and the Mendham Fire Department. We have 24 people working here. They've been in the industry on average for over 12 years, and they've worked for us for over 7 years. We were New Jersey Business Monthly magazine. We were one of the 10 best places to work in New Jersey last year. Like blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Including stories that show that they're reliable. So again, we created this. We had everyone in the company memorize it. And it wasn't like some test. It wasn't like the SATs. It wasn't like, I want you to deliver this script verbatim all the time. It's just now if they like go out to dinner or so and someone says, oh, how's work? Do you like the place you work? And it's like, oh my God, we're great. We were New Jersey Business Monthly magazine, one of the 10 best places to work. And the people, we have our first customer who ever hired us 20 years ago, like people really trust us. You know what I mean? It's like that. It's like you mix and match however, whatever's easy for you.
That's cool.
I hope you're enjoying the show. Sorry to interrupt, but if you're looking to improve any area of your life, one of the first things you'll want to do is to figure out where you are today and where the gaps are, and then really get clear on where you want to go. Visionary leaders need clarity like human beings need oxygen. It's essential. That's why my team and I put together a great starting point for you on your trusted leader journey. It's called the Trusted Leader Profile, and it will allow you to take charge of the atmosphere in your business by helping you understand your trusted leader style and how you can elevate the level of trust in your business. With understanding, you can make better choices and grow the level of trust and your results. For being a listener to the show, it's 100% complimentary for you to access the profile. All you have to do is go to www.sudyco.com/profile. And Sudyco is SUDYCO. Again, that's www.sudyco.com/profile. I really believe that the profile will help you understand the norms you bring to your business and unlock the next level of leadership for you.
I know that you were a part of work with Simon Sinek to help him come up with his differentiation. Tell me a little bit about that story.
Oh, I usually, with individual clients like that, I don't usually like to talk about them specifically. Okay. Not just that whatever. Nothing bad. I mean, the guy's a genius.
I hear you.
It's amazing or whatnot. It's
well, it's on your website. That's why I just.
Well, right. That his quote is. That's right.
Yeah. So everybody can go to the website.
Right. Exactly.
And see your.
Thank you for asking them. Yeah.
You got it. Okay, so. How important is building trust with your clients when you're working to differentiate yourself?
Well, the idea of differentiation or your brand or whatever it is, it's all predicated on the idea of trust. Like there would be, you wouldn't have your brand would be, a brand is a promise that you deliver over and over again. So that has to do with trust. By the way, what I was going to say was if people can't rely upon you to deliver the same kind of thing over and over again, then you have this helter-skelter kind of brand, and it's not a brand, but actually it is a brand. I was going to say like the Joker from Batman. Like the Joker from Batman is a brand that he's going to cause chaos. Like that's predictable. He's going to cause mayhem and chaos. That's part of his brand. So forgive me for going there, but it's this idea of you're brought in for a specific thing and they can trust that you're going to bring that to them.
Yeah. What pops in my mind as you say that is that every leader of every business has their brand within their business and externally, and you can't really escape that. So everything you're doing is creating your brand, particularly nowadays because social media and other ways that we can connect with people now much more easily with technology actually amplifies that. So more and more important to have a brand that you want.
Right. Yeah, a brand. Right. That's a great point. A brand to me, or a point of differentiation, like it shouldn't be confining. It should be liberating, but it just helps people be more comfortable with who you are and what it is that they might expect from you. It's this idea of sometimes when people are trying to create differentiation or a brand, they get all kinds of crafty and they do all kinds of fancy things and they won't really say what it is that they do. And I say, look, I'm mad. I usually start sentences with look, by the way. Look, When people go to a restaurant, if you just sit down and you ask and the waiter says, let me tell you our specials, and they start saying all these unusual names and you don't quite know what it is, like what language this is and so forth, it'll make you really nervous. Like you're going to get angry or nervous. You want to know that going into that restaurant, like I had said before, you want to know, oh, this is a Mexican restaurant. So now you can listen in a more comfortable way as you listen to the specials, because now it'll make sense because there's an overarching, oh, it's Mexican food, I may find it spicy and so forth. Like there are things people want to define you, and you want to let them define you. It's just that you want to then show them how you're a little different and better than their definition. And by the way, an elevator speech format that I created kind of sums this up best. I often have people say, like, let's say you're a leadership consultant, right? But this could work for anyone. If you were a credit card company, whatever it is, but I'll just say leadership. And it would be like, oh, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm a leadership consultant. I'm a leadership expert. I help companies like blah, blah, blah with their leadership, but I do leadership in a really unusual way. Let me tell you about, and then you tell them about, right? So it's, oh, leadership with companies like American Express and blah, blah, blah. And like they work with these people. Interesting. Oh, and so I get you, Mexican restaurant, like that's the Mexican restaurant part. But I do leadership in a really unusual way. And now you tell them about how you're distinct. But they're really listening for it now. You know what I mean? Because
so they're leaning in.
Yeah. I mean, you're a storyteller. I have a background, as you know, in entertainment. As a magician, I've worked on magic shows. I've worked on live shows, Broadway type of shows. I've worked on comic books. I've worked on like all kinds of stuff. And it's just good storytelling. Like it's clear about what you're about and the importance of who you are. And now let me tell you about how you're different from everyone else out there. Like everyone's going to listen.
Yeah. A couple things that stood out to me from what you were just talking about are some of the elements that create trust. And one was transparency, that you're talking about, sharing who you are and what you're doing. And, maybe it's what's different about you, but you're being more transparent than you might otherwise be. You're not behind the wall. You're not the kitchen behind the wall.
Exactly.
And then the second part that was about consistency, that, people can trust you because you're going to follow through. You're going to do what you say. You're going to provide what it is they have purchased or they're going to purchase, and they feel confident about it. So those are really critical elements to creating trust and becoming a trusted leader or trusted business.
Right. Right. Well said. And really this idea, you talked about transparency, like this idea of finding differentiation is not quite as hard as people sometimes think. So an example, I like to tell this story sometimes. It's a very early story about transparency. So in the early 20th century, there was an advertising man, very famous back then. Like he dealt with Wrigley's gum and all kinds of things. His name was Claude Hopkins. He famously wrote a book called Scientific Advertising back in I think the teens or the 20s. And so Claude Hopkins got a call from the Schlitz Brewery. And the guy from the Schlitz Brewery said, Mr. Hopkins, there are 8 big breweries in the United States. And on that list of 8 big breweries, we're number 8. We're in last place. We need your help. And Claude Hopkins said, I'm positive I can help you, but in order to help you, I'm going to have to take a tour of your brewery. And the guy from Schlitz said, Mr. Hopkins, I don't think you'll find much if you take a tour of our brewery, but if that's a condition of hiring you, it's very easy to grant. You're in Chicago, we're in Milwaukee, just hop on a train, 1905 or whatever. and come over here and we're happy to give you a tour. And Claude Hopkins did just that. And what he saw at the Schlitz Brewery astonished him. The first thing they showed him was an artesian well 3,000 feet deep. It went that deep because Schlitz wanted to make a pure beer. And they thought the purest water on earth was that deep. If they stayed too close to the surface, there'd be all these impurities and sediments and things like that. So they went super deep. And by the way, artesian well means that the water, the pure water, was spewing up like a geyser from the ground. And Hopkins was very impressed seeing this. And then they showed him a machine that triple steam cleaned every bottle before they put the beer in it. Again, if they want to make a pure beer, the water needed to be pure and the bottles needed to be clean. They couldn't introduce, sediments then. And then they showed him under lock and key, underground in a vault, what Hopkins called was a single mother yeast cell. It was a single cell that had taken Schlitz brewers and scientists 1,017 experiments in order to make this single mother yeast cell. It had the exact flavor of Schlitz beer that the Schlitz hierarchy, like for every bottle of Schlitz that ever had been made, it tasted like this thing. And every bottle of Schlitz that ever would be made tasted like this single mother yeast cell. It had the exact flavor that the Schlitz hierarchy wanted replicated throughout time for Schlitz. It was essentially the great grandmother of all Schlitz all time. And Hopkins was standing like a few feet away from this thing, and he was freaking out. And so Hopkins said, "Why aren't you telling everyone about these wonders?" And the guy from Schlitz said, "Mr. Hopkins, I told you wouldn't understand it, and you don't understand it. These are not wonders. This is how you brew beer at scale. This is how we brew beer, and this is how every one of our 7 other competitors brews beer at scale. As a matter of fact, if we blindfolded you and we pulled down all our signs from all the breweries and we put you in one and took the blindfold off, you would have no idea where you were, because we do everything. We all do everything so alike. So what we're doing here is nothing special at all. What we're doing here is very, very ordinary." And Claude Hopkins, the famous advertising man, said, "Well, maybe, but the public doesn't know that." And so Hopkins proceeded to write a series of long advertisements detailing every single thing he saw, detailing the 3,000-foot artesian well, the triple steam cleaning bottle machine, the 1,017 experiments, the lock, the key, single mother yeast cell, all that and more he put into these ads. And they ran them in places like the Saturday Evening Post. And in under a year, Schlitz went from being number 8 in America to being tied, at least, for number 1. So to me, the moral of that story is what is ordinary to you may be extraordinary to your marketplace if they only knew about it. Yeah. So sometimes your differentiation doesn't have to be anything extraordinary. It's something that you're doing that others are doing. It's just that the world doesn't know about it. So by you bringing it to people's attention, it's almost like you're claiming ownership in a way, in people's minds, at least, for it.
I love that idea, because I do think that differentiation and positioning is about in the minds of your customers or potential customers. And I do think that entrepreneurs, business leaders, even government leaders are so entrenched in their own everyday, day in and day out, or creating their business, that they don't see it. I think that's where a consultant like you can be so helpful, because you can mirror back what you see as different that some of us may not see. We just don't see it because it's just how it is, right?
Right. It's like I was working recently, and I'm trying to think about how much I can say about this, but I was working recently with a client, and I asked him, I said, "So why did you start this business? Like, what's your backstory?" And he said, "Oh, I'll tell you what my backstory is. That's really easy." And he told me this story about being with this group of investors and coming up with this idea for the business with the group of investors. And I said, and that's the story he had been telling. In other words, if you had asked him on a podcast or something, or if he was pitching for seed money or whatnot, that's the story he would tell. But I said, well, that's not your backstory. That's a story. I'm not saying it's not a real story, but your backstory is like why you fell in love with this idea and like why you're in this business at all. And anyway, we went back 20 odd years in time. Anyway, I don't want to say the story for, again, I'm not sure for NDA reasons, if I should say it yet, but it's this, when he tells this story now, it's magical. And as a matter of fact, like the idea of his story about why he started the business drives the entire business now. Like we created that. It's the story is real. When I said we created that, I don't mean like
right. No, but you took the words and put them together.
It's just that story about why he started this whole business back from when he was in college, like why he started it. The idea behind that story is now it's the idea of the business itself. And so that means not only is it's the business differentiation, but it's the products and the services that the business have. They're all behind that idea, all stemming from, oh, well, I'll tell you how I fell in love with this idea and why I started it. Like it went back to high school and then in college and boom. And it's like, okay, boom. That's what your business is. Like, that's why people will buy things from you. If you tell them that story from high school and college. Does that make?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's awesome. Cause I'm experiencing that even with working with you is that, I've been doing this stuff for so long that I don't see the uniqueness about it, but talking with you, you can help me see it and how to frame it. Still the same stuff, just framing it differently.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, it's not as hard. I understand that people can't see it for themselves, but it's not like splitting the atom. It's not the hardest. Like what differentiation really is, if they're making white t-shirts, my t-shirt's going to be black. If they're making short sleeve t-shirts, my t-shirt's going to have long sleeves. If their t-shirt has words on the front, mine's going to have words on the back. If theirs has words on the front and back, I'm going to have a picture on the front of mine. If theirs is crew neck, I'm going to have turtleneck, whatever. Like that in its simplest form. It's just that you have to find the right thing to differentiate. But in its most basic form, that's what differentiation is, what I was just describing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're a magician,
Yes.
and I think magicians think differently.
Yes.
You're thinking ahead, you're putting it all together. So tell me a little bit of your unique perspective on business from your magician mind. Tell us how we can maybe use that mindset in helping to position us, or how you use it in your mind to help position your clients.
Right. Yeah. So, I have a background since I was 4 years old. I was interested in magic. And so I've been doing magic on and off for a lot of years. I was the magic consultant on Magic for Dummies. I did, and so forth, some TV shows and things of that nature. And I co-created what, at least until recently on TripAdvisor, was the highest rated live show in New York City. It's run for over 20 years, Chamber Magic. And it's actually rated higher than even the show Hamilton. So I both created the branding, the differentiation for that show, and also I co-create the magic tricks for that show. So that would be, I have a heavy duty background in magic. And when you're a magician, there are a bunch of things that magicians do that are different than a normal person. But one of the things is to make a really great magic trick, you have to go for the freak out, is what I call it.
Go for the freak out, huh?
Yes. So when you do a magic trick, if the trick that you're doing is too subtle, it won't work for anyone. So an example of a subtle trick would be for me to say, Sue, can I borrow a quarter from you? And then I say, what's the date on the quarter? And you say 2017. And now I say, I take the quarter, I put it in my hand, I make a magic pass over it, and I open it, and I say, now read the quarter's date. And now it says 2018. That would be a horrible magic trick because it's too subtle to really register. You might say, oh, well, maybe I misread the date when I was looking at it. Maybe it's dark in here. Maybe I have bad eyesight. Maybe, Levy was shaking or so, like holding it, and I couldn't really read it well. There's all kinds of factors. To freak people out, you need to ask for your coin, give you a Sharpie marker, ask you to write your initials in Sharpie on the coin. I take the coin, put it in my hand, snap my fingers, and I open it. And now your coin is turned into a live box turtle with your self-same initials on the shell. And then I give you the box turtle and it's yours. So that's a trick that would freak you out. It would stop you in your tracks and you'd never be able to stop talking about it. You tell other people about it. You think about it at night when you were, on the way home in the car and so forth. So for magicians, we need to go for the freak out. It's how do we amplify this to such a way that people go like, that's not possible, like, oh my God, like, so subtlety doesn't work. And so when I work with people in their businesses, the differentiation that we go for may be, they need to stand out, right? I say, like the good news is you're going to stand out. The bad news is you're going to stand out. So if you're uncomfortable standing out, you should not differentiate yourself. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to work. If you just want to be one of the crowd, standing out's not going to work for you. So the stuff that we come up with really does make people stand out. And it has to be something that the audience, like your marketplace, will want to talk about. Right? The same way they talk about the live box turtle, it's talking about, oh, you mean I need to start with why? You know what I mean? Like, it's that kind of thing. It's ways of actually changing the public's consciousness, like creating conversations about things that, that people have just not thought that way before about them. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. Yes, I think it helps us all to see how we might think differently in order to differentiate ourselves. And I love the freak out factor. If people are freaking out about what you're doing, then maybe we need to be piling some other things on there or doing it differently.
That's right. Well, and also, you can be freaking people out in a number of ways. Like, if going for your overall differentiation is too grand for you, it's too scary. And it is for people sometimes. It's like, what are all the different things you can do in your service that are very different than, I know of one business owner who this was from years ago. He went to a company, to their warehouse. They hadn't paid him. And they said, we haven't gotten your goods that you sent us. And he said, I sent them. I know that you got them. They're in your warehouse. And he said, I'm going to come to your warehouse and find them and show them to you, so then you'll pay me. And they said, okay, go ahead. And so they went to the warehouse, and the warehouse was enormous. And there were boxes. There were tens of thousands of boxes everywhere. And they were all identical brown boxes, including his. They were regular boxes, like that you get anywhere. So he said, oh my God, he said, I'm blending in with everyone else. So from that, he started to use white boxes. He started to put his picture on the boxes. He put a joke on the boxes. He put, you know what I mean? He started to do stuff. And then he expanded out from there, differentiating in other ways. But that's an example of different. If all the boxes are brown, mine are going to be white. If all the boxes have no personality to them, I'm going to have this picture of me smiling on it with a caption saying, "Isn't this guy handsome?" on it. You know what I mean? Like, right? That's differentiation.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I so appreciate you being here on Lead with Trust. And how can people get a hold of you and find out more about what you do?
I hope they don't get a hold of me. Jeez. Yeah. Hope they kind of throttle me. If they want to speak to me. So my website is levyinnovation.com. That's LEVY and then the word innovation.com. And my email and stuff's there. So you can find me at levyinnovation.com.
Perfect. Well, I think this is a great way for us to all be thinking how we might change up and freak out and differentiate ourselves over this next year. I know I have a lot of food for thought. I'm going to be implementing some of these ideas. Thank you so much, Mark. So kind.
Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for listening. I appreciate it.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Lead with Trust, and that wherever you're listening to this podcast, you will subscribe. And if you enjoyed this episode, send it to someone who you think can really use this message that you got today. And also, please leave us a review. Your honest review wherever you listen to your podcasts would be much appreciated. And of course, the more reviews we get, the better they are, the better for the podcast. I'm truly on a mission to get more and more people to understand that trust is the essential element. So I hope you'll be part of that. This show really exists to help you, leaders, to build your business on a foundation of trust so that you can reap the rewards of becoming that top performer in your market. I see over and over where no one can possibly reach the levels of those people that understand how to build a high trust culture in their business. Now, today, if you're really curious about starting your trusted leader journey, you can get started right away if you just take the free Trusted Leader Profile, and you can learn where you fall along the Trusted Leader continuum. And this really can unlock your confidence on where you are and what you need to do. It's very specific on what you can do. Gives you a snapshot of your leadership style. So if you want to take that, just go to www.sudyco.com and then /profile, and you will get immediate access to the Trusted Leader Profile. Once again, that is www.sudyco.com /profile. All right, that's a wrap. I just can't wait to hang out with you again on our next episode.